Good day to all of you, and hopefully you're still enjoying this wonderful conference on today. Again, my name is Ron Howell, and we're going to be talking about AI governance over the next 30 minutes. So objectives for today in this session, we're going to touch on how we at Columbia International, we use a tiered approach to vet AI risk, and more specifically with Gen AI tools. We're going to talk about how we went about building the vetting and the exception process for our AI governance. And we'll also just touch on some of the policies and the other processes, for example, procurement, that we have this AI governance embedded in. I'm going to touch on other things throughout the presentation as well, AI risks, emerging AI tools that you have to keep in mind going forward, but we're going to dive right in. There's a lot of content, so I may skip through some of the slides, just a warning in advance. So we're going to start off with this question before I go any further. What's the most likely way AI first appeared on your campus? A professor or staff member experimented with it. B, students using it before policies existed. C, IT was trying to block it in your organization. D, IT staff themselves were using it, whether it be ChatGPT, Copilot, to write or troubleshoot code errors. Or E, you don't know how, but it's everywhere now in your organization, across your institution. So if you don't mind, in the chat, just put the answer to what's the most likely way AI first appeared on your campus. A, B, C, D, or E. You know, it's very interesting that we probably, this conversation about AI and around AI, we probably didn't expect it would be this maybe 3 or 4 years ago prior. And now, yet we see the proliferation of it. It's everywhere in our organizations, our institutions. It's simply everywhere. It's exploded, of course. And so again, just giving people time to mark their choices there. Okay, I see more E's. You don't know, but it's everywhere now. Very interesting. Okay, I'm going to move along. Anyone who is still trying to figure out an answer to that question, you definitely can enter that in the chat later on. So, why does governance matter? Why does AI governance matter? It's already here, so we have to pay attention to it. We have to account for it. AI is either already embedded or, trust me, your third-party platforms, vendors, they're working on plans to embed it in tools, whether it be your student information systems, your advising management tools, your ticketing systems for your IT teams, whatever you can think of, even down to websites, of course, with chatbots that are powered by AI. It's either heavily embedded now in the tools you use or will be more so in the future. And governance, for the most part, it's lagging in some areas. Not all institutions, I believe, may be lagging in terms of AI governance, but there are many organizations that either don't have a policy or they may have a policy, but they don't have it embedded or integrated into other procedures or policies, whether it be procurement and things of that nature. Why are people using AI? So that's another AI why question. So why do we need to have governance? But why are people using AI anyway? And there's many reasons why people on campuses or in our universities are using AI, from writing emails, content creation, to analyzing data, especially spreadsheet data, instructional support. There's a lot of faculty using it to create lesson plans, rubrics, those types of things. AI can be a very good tool to help with efficiency. So we're talking about our offices, our administrative offices, using it. And then, of course, it typically does a very good job at answering questions and giving knowledge and information. And so there are many more reasons why people are using it, and some of the more emerging reasons, even when we consider agentic and task-based AI usage. But we'll touch on that just a little bit more as well. So one of the things I want to share in our environment, in our institution, we of course use LinkedIn Learning. And over the past year, 4 out of the top 10 courses that have been viewed by our LinkedIn Learning users have been AI related. The number 1 course viewed was AI, and the second most viewed course was also AI related. About 25%, it's a little closer to 26% of our LinkedIn Learning users viewed the top AI course, and then 18% for the second most viewed. And those specific AI courses are at the bottom of the slide you see. Artificial intelligence, general artificial intelligence is the first most viewed one, then AI for business, and then AI productivity. Those courses being in the LinkedIn Learning platform. What this tells me that not only do we think that people are using AI, they're actually using our learning platforms to find out more about it. Second poll question: which AI governance stage best describes your institution today? We have a formal framework or roadmap. You have a policy set of standards or guidelines published. You have a task force around AI. Or you're just the wild, wild west when it comes to AI in your environment. So I'm going to give you some time to just put in the chat which option you think describes AI governance at your institution today. And so we know in the previous poll question, a few indicated you don't know how it got there, but it's there. It's in your environment. Seeing these responses come in, seems like the most so far is C. There's a task force, and I do see. I think I see it. Yeah, I think I see mostly C's. You have a task force, and that's definitely a start. Definitely a start. All right, so I'm going to move on. Again, anyone who has not submitted your response in the chat, you feel free to do that as well. So there is a governance gap when we look at AI being adopted in your organization, to whatever extent it's being used. There is a governance gap. About 90% of faculty staff use AI, and this is according to universitybusiness.com. In terms of AI policies, the visual may not be as clear, but institutions with formal AI policies are less than half of the organizations, and institutions with vetting processes, either further or lesser to a lesser degree. And then, of course, AI under centralized governance, meaning that instead of it being centralized, it's decentralized. And we see that far fewer schools are indicating a centralized AI governance approach. So we know that the environment is different in higher education. We tend to be decentralized. We are an organization that prides ourselves on academic freedom. The ability to learn and to use tools is at the heart of institutions. However, we know that we are heavily regulated, FERPA, GLBA, GDPR, and so that presents challenges as well, because the data that AI really lives off of and is we're getting that benefit from AI with data, that's presenting some challenges for us. And some environments tend to be very mixed. In our environment, we have a K-12 division, so you can imagine AI not only being used in the higher ed sense, but also in the K-12 sense in their different usages. And so how does that mix impact governance? So our approach, we do believe in enabling people to use AI. So we haven't taken the approach of don't use it at all. We do believe in enabling it. Basically enabling the usage, protecting our data, focus on the protection of the data, and then putting things in place to maintain compliance throughout the usage of these tools. And I'll touch more, I'll really get down into our approach. So here at Columbia International, we allow people to use Copilot. It's what we put in our tier 1 baseline access. It's a part of the tenant, the O365 tenant. Everyone has access. There's not an additional cost outside of 365. And it's low risk because the data will reside in our tenant. However, there are, we found out that there are needs beyond Copilot. ChatGPT is a very powerful tool. And so we have ChatGPT Business that is an additional cost, but that's a tier 2 license that we will apply after justification that what our users need to use in it, they can't do in Copilot. And so with that tiered approach, this slide here just shows a little bit of what I touched on, Copilot and ChatGPT Business. All of the other Gen AI tools are restricted. They're not a part of our standard unless exceptions are granted. So outside of Copilot and ChatGPT, everything else is restricted or prohibited, again, unless someone justifies the need for that tool, that Copilot, nor the ChatGPT Business can be used for. Exceptions. Now, the ChatGPT Business is a standard because it does not ingest the data into its learning model. Same thing with the Copilot on the tenant. So again, we're allowing people to use it. We have standards, but we're protecting the data. We're coming from a perspective of protecting the data. So ChatGPT Free, Pro, and Plus, the data is included in the learning model. So these are prohibited. However, if in vetting those tools, there is data that's not really sensitive being used, we have a process of approving or making an exception for that. And I'll, of course, touch more on what that process looks like as we move forward. The process diagram that you see here is simply in our ticketing system, the person submits the request, IT reviews it and vets it. We use the opportunity to say, hey, do you know about Copilot? Here are the benefits of it. However, if you do need ChatGPT Business, you have to give us a little more in terms of justifying the need. And then, of course, decision tree, if it's yes, it is approved, they get a business license, and we typically send a form that they agree for accepting the risks with, if there's an exception granted for the free version, the Pro and Plus versions. And then if it's not, if we don't grant the exception, unfortunately, they don't get the opportunity to use that other tool. And so the vetting intake form is simply a generic form already in our ticketing system. It is not a new form that we've come up with. And so it simply looks like this. User puts in their request simply how they would go about putting any other ticket or request to the IT. That ticket is then sent to our team, who actually have the responsibility of vetting those AI requests. Again, we touched on if it's approved and if it's denied. I did touch on that if it is approved, we do require a risk acknowledgement form and training to be taken. So on the screen, you see a sample of the initial follow-up comment or email from the ticket. So a user has put in a ticket. This wording simply says, thank you for being interested in AI tools. We then highlight the Copilot standard. Again, the benefits are there, as I talked about earlier, and then what do you need to send us in terms of a justification? Doing it all through the ticket. So it's there being managed effectively. If it is granted, there's this separate form that's called an AI user agreement, exception request, where if the person does justify a need for ChatGPT Business, for example, they're using it for sensitive data, and the power behind ChatGPT Business has proven to do something more effectively than Copilot, we'll grant the exception. Their manager, however, on this form has to also approve. In this form, maybe a little hard to see it, there's a link that also sends them to the LinkedIn Learning video on AI. This is another message that's sent to them. If we do grant the ChatGPT Business, here are the instructions of how to use it and how to log into the tenant for the organization that we control. And so that's verbiage. They're all being sent through the ticketing system. And this next one is a sample of if it's not met. Again, verbiage we have built into the ticket that sends a message to the user that the exception was not approved. And so in that case, they would have to continue to use Copilot or escalate their complaint to their manager to have a discussion with me further. So the training is also part of our control because we use it to help reduce risk, make sure that users are aware of the data that we need to protect. And first, to just be very transparent, we're not doing this to be mean. We're doing this, again, from the perspective of data security and data safety, the safety of our students, data safety of our students, our employees. So we're coming from that perspective. The screen you see here is an example of the LinkedIn Learning video that we use. It covers AI in general, but it also touches on the data privacy and the data security aspect of it. So training again, as an enablement, however, not just compliance. So the training helps us as a control, but it also helps ensure that the user knows how to use AI and what things they can do with it to be even more effective, at least from our perspective. Whether the training is coming in through live webinars we perform, through monthly learning tips, through and other risk messaging that we send, we typically see the training as enabling our users, not just from a control perspective. So we do not monitor individual AI prompts. We do not, have any tools on the back end to see what they're doing with AI. We enable it. We simply govern through the procurement process, through agreements, and through the training aspect. So we do have acceptable use policy. That's an existing policy. We simply modify that policy to put AI governance in it. And then on the acquisition side, no software can be approved or paid for or acquired without the IT approval part. So here's how we've embedded the control of AI governance in the other tools we have. This is in addition to the standards. We have a standards page where we're listing out the Copilot, the ChatGPT, and the other tools as well. I'll skip this slide. So the key takeaways, we allow the tier by risk approach based on the data, and we simply vet and train, and we protect without surveillance or monitoring what they're doing with it. In terms of what we've learned that the governance process does work. Some users were hesitant to use the ChatGPT Business because of fear of if the school moves on from that tool into another Gen AI enterprise level tool, what will happen to the data? And of course, some approval delays and the frustration, especially when we first started it off until we really got it going. In terms of next steps, I think we would put more time into looking at the automation of the intake process, making sure there's a human in the middle, including other emerging AI tools, such as the app builders like Replit and those other automation tools. We need to make sure that's actually included in our processes. And then I think third, being able to develop metrics and dashboards along the way where we can show senior leadership how the governance actually benefits us from controlling costs and risks. So, emerging opportunities to govern. I talked about the tools like Replit. Well, there are meeting recording and transcription tools like Read AI and things of that nature, Otter. And so these tools are capturing data. And many of our users, we want to make sure they're aware that the data captured, if it includes PII and other sensitive information, we have to ensure that the free versions of these tools, if they don't have protections around them, aren't exposing our organization to risks. So the other thing I touched on, the app builder, I actually skipped this particular slide. And the next one I'll actually use more of. So we have the things like Replit I talked about and other AI app generation tools that we anticipate our, especially our power users, and we use the term shadow AI sometimes. We have a core of users who may want to use and dive into these applications to build systems for themselves, whether they can't wait on IT or they want to do something that they feel that they can do on their own. And again, if we're coming from a posture of empowerment, we want to be able to do that, but we want to make them aware of the risks and things that they need to be mindful of. These software tools do require security reviews, code data, and those things. If they build something with an AI app generation tool, it's software. And so it's going to require vetting of the code and a lot of other things. The users may not typically be thinking about that. So our governance model has to adapt to pull those risks in. Agentic AI, of course, something we have to keep in mind as well. Especially users seeking to have repetitive tasks done more and more. So the institutional risks, security, compliance, more so data, financial risks, duplicate AI tools potentially mean more money and more costs that the organization is incurring. And then the security risk aspect in terms of cybersecurity vulnerabilities of code and those things. Our IT teams also diving into AI and using those a little more, whether it be for coding and those things, may also present risks. So we have that on the horizon. And then there's the risk that's not necessarily technical, so to speak, but it's the over-reliance trap. What happens when our workforce is so dependent on AI that they decline in their cognitive ability to think through things? Or if there's a process that's built on AI, what if that process, that AI tool goes away, it's down? Do we have the ability to still do business without it? And so I think there's a risk there that we still have to treat as a risk, even though it's not technical. So taking this governance approach should empower users by removing obstacles, the fear of AI, how to use it effectively, making sure they have that clarity with training. It should allow a community to be built with universal AI knowledge, to where people are collaborating with each other in alignment with the governance guardrails. And then, of course, having stronger AI culture and community for the future. I think when we look at scenarios where we have to enable or share information with senior leadership for discussions and partnership, I think it's very key that we share with leadership that AI is already here. Good governance actually should empower the institution and protect us from risks. Those risks, again, from misusage, cognitive skills decline, financial cost, implications, and then what support we need from senior leadership, policy, procurement, enforcement, investment in committees. Some of you said, of course, you already had task forces. It's very good if those things are supported and promoted by leadership to really ensure the right governance is in place for your organization. So with that said, hopefully I've shared something that will help you on your governance journey. And I wish you all the best, and we'll be available for questions in the meeting room with the speakers. Thank you.